Good morning, everyone. I'm glad you're all here with me. It's time for us to get to study about the fourth Beatitude, hunger for righteousness. Isn't it interesting that these Beatitudes are nothing new? Jesus is repeating the laws that they've been under since the beginning of time. And here Jesus is sitting on a hillside. He's talking to his disciples, and people are gathered around listening. And he's telling them this particular statement. Listen, Matthew 5, verse 6. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled. This is nothing new. In fact, he said this all the way back from the beginning of time. And he shows this, in fact, Romans 1 verse 20 tells us we can know what is right to do and what God's character is simply by looking at the creation. So let's do that. Let's take a look at how the creation was designed to God. And here we're going to start with the basic needs of life, the physical life. What did God put in a physical world so that we could know we need God and how to approach Him, how to be with Him? Let's take a look now at this part here, the basic needs of life. You know, whatever we need food. We need food, and Paul talks about this relationship of our body, that our physical bodies have this need for meat, that it is a relationship our bellies have with meat is in order to keep us alive. We need food for fuel. And the fuel is to give us energy to do things, to jump and run around and to work, to do all kinds of things. And we'll need it all our life in order to be able to have the energy. Every day when we wake up, we've got to have food that day in order to stay alive. Well, the second thing we see is we also need drink. That liquid is very necessary. And God's designed us that way, I can't remember what the percentage is. Some people say 60, some people say 70% water, maybe even more than that. But the reality is you need the liquid. It's necessary for your neurons to fire in your brain, for them to be able to work. You've got to have liquid there. And you know, when you get sick or whatever, and you have some amoebic dysentery, which is a nice word for diarrhea, okay? Um, and you start losing all your water, you can lose your ability to think. And so you drink fluids like Gatorade, or they have some others. I can't remember the name of them right now. And they'll have electrolytes in them and so on and so forth. They're just designed to help your brain function because you need this water and these necessary liquids in there. And then what about your blood system? It's liquid. It's got to be able to have water in order to function. And your blood goes all over your body, all the way even to the ends of your fingers and toes and right to the skin and everywhere. Well, you've got to have a lot of liquid in order to accomplish that. So look what he's saying here. You need food and you need drink. And then he says, you even need association. And he designed us that way so we would not be alone. In fact, you remember when Adam was created, and back in Genesis 2, and he brings all the animals up, and he brings them up to see Adam so Adam could name them. He looks and there's male and female of each kind, and he realizes he is so alone. By himself, he has no one to be with. And then after he named all the animals, it is after that that he created Eve for him, because he wanted him to desire someone because he was alone. Well, what happens is that's the first example of marriage. And what we do the same thing. We say today, I'm alone and I don't want to be alone. I don't want to do all this for just me. I want someone to share the excitements with, and I want someone to be able to hold me when I'm crying, and I want someone to lean on, and I want to do all this stuff for someone. So we get married, and in the blink of an eye, just a few short years, man, we've got a gaggle of people around us, and we're not alone. And there's nothing so much fun as, well, there's two things. One, the noise of all the people coming over and eating together and running around, and the jokes we tell and the memories we have of raising all our kids and all that sort of stuff. And then there's the wonderful time when they all go home. So we need this association. We need to be with other people. This is what drives people whose spouses have died to marry again, because it is difficult for us to be alone, and we desire this association. Now look, this is the way God has designed us to be in the physical realm, and then He did some basic needs for wealth. And there's a reason for wealth. There's a reason we need to be able to do it. Number one, he shown us what is precious to everyone, and he designed it this way: gold and silver. Gold and silver. We've had, how many songs have we heard about gold and silver, or how people are precious, and they compare them to gold and silver. And gold and silver are precious things, and there are diamonds and jewels of all kinds, and pearls, and all these things that are in the world that are very rare, and so they become very precious. And we use that as a standard by how we're going to measure things, and how valuable the dollar is, and how valuable our work is. How much is your work worth? We're going to pay you so much in money, or in gold, or in jewels, or in maybe something you'll trade your work for, a car, or for a house, or something like that. We see this need for the wealth. We don't work just for the fun of it. We do it because we need to provide for ourselves and do things. And so if you're going to produce something, guess what? You need a market, and you need this outlet to be able to, someplace to put your produce, what you enjoy making and doing, what job you're good at. You may not enjoy it, but you're good at it. And so there you go out and you do this, and you're trading your time and effort for something of value to you, something that you can turn around and trade for other things. At one time, it was just barter, and I've been in a lot of places where we just bartered, and that's all money really is a barter. And we collect money, but we don't collect it because we like pictures of dead guys and pieces of paper, but because we realize this is what we're worth, and we're going to add it up, and we're going to use it to get something, be it a nice house, or a nice car, or a position, or power, or whatever we're going to trade that money for. That's what we're doing. However that works, that's the market and the production. So we got precious things, and time is one of them. And then let's say we were sitting around, we were creating something in our garage, and all of a sudden we have something that everybody said, man, that is the cutest thing in the world. I want one of those. And so we can take it to the market and sell it. That's really and truly a fair system, which is capitalism. In fact, God created Israel, the only documented nation where we know how God would design the nation to be functioned. Our founding fathers here in America looked at that and saw it and modeled this United States after that. We perverted it pretty good, with trying to be socialists and thinking we can give things away. But you know what the saying is? For one man to receive without working for it, another man must work for it and not receive it. So the only fair system is capitalism, and the closer we get to that, the better our life will be. Let's talk about that for a minute. Let's try to understand that. So you've got a guy over here in Texas or Arizona or wherever, and he's out there working in the heat, and he's wants to raise cattle. He loves riding horses. He likes working with animals. He's raising his cows, and he's having to vaccinate, and he has to pay for them. He has to pay for all the fencing and all that sort of stuff, and the upkeep of the cows, and etc. Why would he do that? Well, he does it because he loves it, but that's not good enough. Just because you love something, you might have a hobby doing it, but you wouldn't do it if there wasn't a market. So why does he go out there and sweat and toil for these animals, maybe get kicked and hurt? Because he knows someone in New York wants a steak and they can't grow them there because there's so many people there. They don't have the room for that. And so he'll gladly work here and enjoy his life raising animals so that people in New York can have good steak to eat. Now, what about a guy in New York? Well, he's going to sit there and he's going to program his computers, and he's going to make them where they function well and function for your needs, so that a farmer here can buy those programs and use it to work in his tractor, and he can produce more and produce better, straighter rows or whatever, knows exactly how deep and so on and so forth he's got to do all this stuff. And the everybody's working together. There's a market for what you have. You're paid a fair price. You do a fair amount of work. And here's what God has said about that. A workman is worthy of his hire. Exactly what we have in the capitalism. In fact, if you take something from one man to give to another, you're stealing. And that is what socialism is about. It's kind of interesting. Now let's take a look at the spiritual realm. Now, God's shown us the physical and what we need in order to have the physical realm. So what do we need what are the basic needs for life in the spiritual realm? Aha, I'm glad you asked that question. Let's take a look. First, we need bread and water. Isn't that exactly what we talked about a while ago, about how we need food, and we need to be able to have liquid and so on in our physical bodies? And he's saying in our spiritual bodies, we also have to have food and water. What then is the food that we need? And listen to this in John 18:37 through 38. He says this: "You're a king, then?" said Pilate. Jesus answered, "You're right in saying I'm a king. In fact, this is the reason I was born. For this reason I came to the world, to testify the truth. Everyone on the side of the truth listens to me." What is truth? Pilate asked. With this, he went out again to the Jews and says, "I find no basis for a charge in him." Now, truth. Well, wait a minute. I thought you said bread. You said that bread was what we needed. Yes, let's take a look at 1 John over here near Revelation. 1 John chapter 1 and verse 18. And look what it says. I'm sorry, I can't be. That should be 8. Okay. If we claim to be without sin, we deceive ourselves and the truth is not in us. Now, wait a minute. You're still talking truth and you're talking bread. In 2 Timothy, he says this. 2 Timothy 2:15. You have known the scriptures, you have known from infancy the holy scriptures, which is able to make you wise for salvation through faith in Christ Jesus. Now, let's take a look. What is the bread? And the bread is his word. And the water is the living water he provides that washes away our sins and makes us clean. This is the bread and the water. This is the truth. Now, remember I told you he spent his entire time here on earth dispelling the lies? I was listening to someone talk this morning, and they were talking about how this particular place was going to close its borders, and they were doing so because they were concerned about the virus, the coronavirus. And I said, by what law are they thinking? Why are they closing the borders? Because when they closed the borders, they did not tell their own people. And some of them were on vacation and could not get back. Some of them were wanting to go back, but could not go back because they did not say, hey, all of you who are from our country, come back quickly because we're going to have to close the borders. Now, if you would lovingly do that, that's what you would have done. If you were not concerned about that, but more about how it looks to the world, you're going to be closing your borders without even giving people a chance. Now, where is your source of thought? And there are a lot of things out there telling you they're the truth. There's the Vedas, there's the Chinese philosophies, there is the book of the Quran, there's the Bible, there are Hindu, all kinds of religions out there. They have the truth. Now, here's the thing. Which one pushes love? And it's just the Bible. Which one pushes anger and self-involvement and even getting away from life into yourself? And those things are going to present that form of law. And if all you care about is how it looks on the stage, and you have money because you've cheated people under your care out of their money, then you know good and well they're not following the Bible. Now look, the Bible is bread and water to us. It is exactly what we need to live. And without it, we can't live. And then he tells us, not only do you need the bread and water, do you need to keep your spiritual body alive, but you also need association. And how do you do that? He tells us that those who are in the church are betrothed to Christ, and he will go and he's going to make this place in his Father's mansion. He's going to come back and get us, and then he's going to take us home to marry us. This marriage proposal thing, and that those people who are in the church are brothers and sisters. And so what do we have? We have a family that is the church. We have a purpose and reason for being together. And here's what we're doing. We're eating of the bread and drinking the water of truth. And then we're associating with other people who also are doing the same thing. So we're hanging around people just like us, and we're telling the stories, and we're telling the jokes, and we're getting together and enjoying the association of being in the family. Let's listen to what James says about that in James 1 and verse 18. Let's hope it's 18. He chose to give us birth through the word of truth, that we might be his first fruits of all he created. We've got to be together as a church, as his first fruits, and we're here doing this in association together. Be it a small church or a large one, it depends on the size of the community. It's not a surprise. Only a few were in the ark. So the church is not going to be huge, unfortunately, because you drive down through town and you see a big town and you can see these people are all following lies and not the truth. But go associate with those who are following the truth, those who are part of the family, those who have had their sins washed away in baptism and are trying their best to walk the walk of God. That's the ones to associate with. And then he even gives us wisdom, which is a fair system. Listen to what he says in Proverbs 2. Proverbs 2, verses 1 through 5. My son. Now, Proverbs is a book of short, pithy statements of truth, given to by a father, as if it's by a father to a son. My son, if you accept my words and store up my command within you, turning your ear to wisdom and applying their heart to understanding, and if you call out for insight and cry aloud for understanding, and if you look for it as for silver and search for it as hidden treasure, then you will understand the fear of the Lord and find the knowledge of God. Look what we have in wisdom. What do we have? Search for it as silver and treasure. What do you mean? Make this your wealth, the knowledge of God. Make it your wealth that you have, because this is the only thing you can take with you in the next life. And then he says, have understanding, because the knowledge of God is not enough. There are people out there in the world who know what God says, but they don't have the understanding nor the belief in it, that it is true. They just know what God said. So you've got to cry out, he says, for insight, meaning how to discern the word, how to divide it and look at it. Cry out to be able to understand it, to be able to take the statements of God, the knowledge of God, and apply it correctly in our day-to-day life. And if you do apply it correctly, that is wisdom. And he says, when you have that, he goes on and later in Proverbs, it says, wisdom that follows God will furnish the rooms in your mind with beautiful things. Oh, what a beautiful, interesting picture that brings. Now let's take a look at what has gone on. What does it mean to hunger and thirst for righteousness, and you will be filled? What do you be filled with? You'll be filled with God. Hunger and thirst for doing what is right. How? By eating of the bread, by drinking of the water, by fulfilling the purpose you are here. Associating with those who are going to heaven and doing what is right, and constantly learning, having insight and understanding, so that when you act, people see the wisdom of God in your actions. Now listen, people are only going to see your actions. They're not going to know what you're thinking. But if your action is the action of a God-fearing man, then they're going to see God in the action. If the thinking is of an enemy of God, they're going to see Satan in your actions. So he's saying here, hunger for thirst and righteousness, and if you're hungry for it, you're going to be filled. If you get up in the morning and you're hungry, we have the word breakfast, which means to break the fast that you've had all night. You get up in the morning, you say, man, I'm hungry. And you smell the bacon frying and the eggs cooking and the coffee percolating and all that sort of stuff. And you go in the kitchen, you say, boy, this is going to be great. Why? Because you're hungry and you're thirsty and you're going to be filled. And he says, in your spiritual walk, hunger and thirst for righteousness, and you will be filled. What a great thing God has done by giving us the scriptures. Thank you for being with me.